Okay, well, that was a trailer of a movie called Brave, and as you may see here, the main character was a woman, and that is also what we are going to be mainly talking about this class.
这部电影是迪士尼的《Brave》的这个主角叫梅丽达，然后她那个就是勇敢的反抗，追寻自由，然后反抗传统，然后最后也实现了自己整个的这种人生的一个改变。然后这就是我们今天要讲的主题，就是关于女性的权利。
All right, so today we will be mainly talking about ancient Greek women and their place in society back then. Now, this is talk. So first of all, let me ask you guys to predict whether how ancient Greek women were treated. Like, were they treated fairly or not? Rami?
I don't think they were treated fairly.
Okay. Anyone else have any predictions? Okay, well, in fact, of course, they were not, well, at least not compared to our modern society, because we obviously treat everybody more fairly now. Sophia?
They weren't allowed to go to school.
Yeah, that was one of the parts where it was unfair. All right, so we're going to start by look at like different Greek women in different places. So as mentioned last time we talked about ancient Greek art, and we mentioned art from Crete, in which the drawings, the paintings featured a lot more women than many of the other city-states. So Crete had more equality than most other city-states. And some people say that Crete believed in goddesses, and they mainly had a woman inherit their property and other stuff passed down from their ancestors.
而且他们的男孩和女孩还能一起参加那种就是同样的运动，这在其他的城邦是很少见的。
Yeah, they participate in the same activities, which was frowned upon on many other city-states. So now Crete was an exception to the unfairness in city-states, but now there are also some other notable women that also were, well, pretty unstereotypical and were treated better. Such as Sappho here. Sappho. Some of you guys may remember Sappho. She is a lyric playwright. She is from Lesbos, and she was born in 610 BC. She was such a famous playwright, like a lyric writer, that she had a statue dedicated to her, and her face was put on coins. Some of you guys may know the importance of coins, but let me just ask you guys a question. Whose face is on the coins that you guys use?
In your country, which
Who has their face printed on the coins?
Yeah.
Patrick?
Queen Elizabeth?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Canada.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Any?
George Washington.
Okay, I didn't quite catch that. Could you repeat that?
George Washington.
Oh, okay, George Washington, the first president of the U.S. As you may see here, like the from you guys' two people, they all are very important figures to like your country, right? So Sappho was also considered very important and popular back then in ancient Greece. Popular enough to be on the coins. Next is Artemisia. Artemisia, the first of Carlos. So some of you guys may or may not remember Artemisia. She was a Persian Navy captain and also a queen of her own country, queen of her own city-state, more like. She was born in 520 BC, and she participated in the Battle of Salamis of the Persian Wars. We did mention about how she, in order to escape, rammed her ship into many of her allied Persian ships and to escape. However, she is a very great Persian general, and Xerxes, who was the Persian king at the time, had...
He's not Persian. He is the
Xerxes.
Greek.
Xerxes.
Oh,
Xerxes. It's Xerxes, the Persian king, actually saw greatness within her, and she also had many great strategies that could have won the Persian War, except Xerxes thought that there were better options. Now, next is Timarete from Ephesus, who was a very famous artist. She lived in 420 BC, and for reference, she was famous even till Rome. Even till Rome, they were still talking about her. So Rome was about like near like the last few years of the BC era, and was like near the AD times. So that was a very long time, like 400 or some years. So the Greek women, they had very changing roles over the time. For example, in Solon's time, Solon was the one who established the first
lawmaker.
Yeah, he was like the first fair lawmaker, because we're not counting Draco into this. Back to in Solon's time, he was like everybody was praising Sappho, but in Pericles' time, Pericles said that the best part of a woman is that nobody talks about them. So that was a really big change of perspective.
到亚里士多德的时候就更坏了，他还觉得女性就是智力不足的，然后把女性贬低到就是说比男性地位低很多的那种地步。
Yeah, at the time of Aristotle, like they already had like basically forced their status down to like almost nothing. All right, so now Athens has always been like our main source of like Greek stereotypes, so we shall look at the Athenian women first. First of all, they marry very early, which is like 14 or 15. So I'm going to ask you all, how old are you all, just to have a contrast?
How old are you guys?
9 years old.
10 years.
Patrick?
I'm 11.
11.
Okay, so I see many people in the chat all saying like around like 9, 10, 12. Yeah. So that's basically like 4 or 5 more years, and if then you will be married if
you are a girl.
Yeah. And if you were in ancient Greece. So that was like very, very young, not even like of legal age. And guess how old the men they were married to? Anyone want to take a guess? Like how old was the man that they would get married to? Rami?
20 something, I guess.
Yeah, that would be a bit too good for them.
NE.
I've read that men's they're like 32 or something.
Yeah. So like 14 or 15-year-old girls, they get like married to 30-year-old like old men. So and also another thing is that they can't choose who to get married to, and their marriage is often arranged by their father or some other male relative.
Father or some other male relatives.
Yes, and also so basically also when they like marry, they also have to pay a dowry, which is basically the money or like jewelry, accessories, or like land that you give to the other side.
No land.
Not like land, but like buildings, like houses.
Yeah, building house.
Yeah, so however, if you had no dowry, no man, no matter how good you look, they wouldn't want you, because basically they're all greedy. They just want the dowry. They want the money. Also, like, they basically can't control much in their marriage. And they also can't get much out of the marriage either. So they can't get any inheritance. Inheritance usually would always be passed down to the son. And if the father didn't have a son, then he would adopt his soon-to-be son-in-law and then marry his, adopted son to his daughter, making his adopted son also his son-in-law.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, no matter how they're trying to prevent the inheritance to pass down to the daughter, because the inheritance always passes down to the male, then basically if they have a son, then they can keep their family in power.
If they have
Yeah.
Have no son or
Yeah,
no
basically,
adopted son.
If a father dies before he has a son or even adopts a son, then the inheritance should go to the daughter. But then the daughter would then marry the oldest man in the family, which is just disgusting, because the oldest man might just be her grandfather. And then it will just, repeat back into their family.
Like his grandfather.
Yeah.
It's just old man.
Yeah.
So the girl is so poor.
I am thinking about like a 15-year-old woman marrying a 97-year-old old man.
Yeah, that would certainly be a possibility. That would be a possibility. And it's not like that doesn't happen. Also, like the father has a lot of power too. The father can forcefully divorce them because like the previous groom was too poor and he found another richer man who wanted to marry her.
Mm-hmm.
So the father can, change your mind anytime and then bring your daughter back to marry a different man. And also the husbands can also force divorce as well.
很少见的，这种情况倒是挺少。
Because usually they after they get like a rich man to be with their daughter, it doesn't really matter anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Husbands can also force divorce, and it is usually like during times of famine, like if there's a drought and they don't have enough food, they usually just leave their wives at like the temple and then they just run away because they don't have enough food to support them. Which is really cruel now that we think of it, but back then that was normal. It happened all the time.
People make jokes.
That's not a joke.
It's real.
It's real.
But luckily that is not the society that we live in now. Now we have like better government, and you would be put in prison if you do that.
People always make jokes about like your father went to a store to get milk and then he never came back.
Yeah, so this I don't know if it's Greek reference, but probably isn't. Yeah, and then oh yeah, and about the dowry, they can't even use a single penny of the dowry. The dowry always goes to the husband. And I'll explain a bit more of the workings of the dowry back then and later. I'm gonna do the rest of the stuff first. So also you might think that a richer woman would have more freedom, but actually that isn't true. Do you guys have any guesses on why being richer would actually grant you less freedom? Any?
Maybe because like all your money has to be handed over to your husband.
Yeah, but then you would just be the same as a poor person. Sophia, do you raise your hand? Okay, well, Kathy?
Because they like want to use them for their money.
Well, not really. All right, I'm gonna say it. So first, the rich woman, they get married to rich men as well, and they end up having like a giant house, a lot of slaves and such. So the rich woman would actually just stay at home because there was no need to go out, and that basically restricted them from going outside and such. Not saying that any other people could go outside. Every other people were like restricted as well. They could barely go outside, except when we're visiting others and for festivals. So they mainly just stay at home watching over the slaves do many things. However,
Housework.
housework and such. However, poorer women, they could in order to support the family, they could like make cloth and sell them at the market. They could go every day and like sell stuff to support their family. Even though that isn't, it's not very easy getting by as a poor person, it still granted them more freedom to go outside and actually come in contact with the outside world.
Yeah. Do you remember the Socrates' wife?
Oh yeah, so Socrates, his family was very poor, and basically Socrates, he got a free pass every day because he had lots of friends. They would always invite him over to eat, but he never brought along his wife or his sons. So basically his wife would go out and work every day to earn enough money for them.
Yes.
All right, and also another thing is that women cannot go to court. So I'm gonna 开始就说一下那个故事。
Okay. No, continue.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, of
Okay.
course.
So I remember a story
Share a
about
story.
it's a story about like inheritance and a lot of other stuff. So I don't really remember the exact names, but so like there was this the father of a woman had arranged a marriage of her with his brother, which is her uncle, which is kind of unlawful nowadays, but back then it happened all the time. You see Egypt, that happened a lot. So then that happened, and then they had a pretty wealthy family, but her uncle or his husband died at war, and he had written inheritance letter, like how his sons would inherit his property,
Yeah.
his wealth after they grow up and become of age. And he gave that to his brother, also his father-in-law. But he trusted him to actually carry out his will and stuff, but he decided to take all the money, and he left his daughter or sister-in-law with her sons just there without a single penny. So the cash that he had left them had lasted a while, until after it was used, he decided to kick them out. And so while her sons were, packing up, they found the letter, because the original father was, he was pretty evil, but he wasn't smart at all. So he didn't destroy any proof of the inheritance letter. And then after the children got it, they found out that they actually had that much money to assess to. However, women cannot go to court. They can be there as witness, but they can't, be like, oh, hey, he took all my inheritance, because they just can't. It's unfair. And she also got like remarried to another person, so she decided to ask her new husband, plead for her new husband to go to court for this. And and that worked, and then they got their money back, and it was actually a pretty happy ending, but it shows that they can't go to court. It's just very unfair.
Okay, one more question: why the wife can't inherit his husband's property?
You just because the inheritance, the property always passes through the men, basically from the father to her husband, and then from her husband to her son.
So 就是这个男的可以继承女的的钱，但是女的不能继承男的的钱。
Yeah,
That's
yeah, that's pretty unfair.
oh so unfair.
Annie, do you have a question?
This sounds all very confusing.
Okay. I can summarize. So basically, this person got married. This woman got married to her uncle. And then her uncle died at war. Or her husband died at war, and then left his son's inheritance. Then her father took that inheritance, that wealth, and then they couldn't go to court because women can't go to court, children can't go to court either until they're of legal age. Yeah, so it's just a small story about like how like she can't do much about it.
后来就是他请求这个女性不能够上法庭，他请求他的第二任丈夫帮他上法庭打官司，拿到了这笔钱，就是他的钱全部被抢走了，但是他也没有办法自己独自一个人去把这件事情就是到法庭去说这件事情，他没有权利，所以说他必须要请男人来帮助。You can translate.
Yeah, so basically she doesn't have any power to do anything about it, so she had to plead her second husband to do it for her. All right, anyways, I'm just gonna add a few facts about the dowry before we move on. So how the dowry works is basically the woman's side, her parents gather a sum of money and then give it to the man's side as like gift for marriage. Now, what happens when like they break up or something happens? Like for example, divorce. If they divorce, then the dowry is given back, not to the woman, but to her parents. And
his father.
Yeah. And if the father dies, if they had a son, then it is given to the son after the son reaches legal age. Sometimes maybe the child is just like dumb, so they might give it to someone else. So if they had no son, then he would either give the dowry and his wife to a friend or an underling to preserve power, which is pretty dumb, and also to keep the power within the people that he trusts.
Yes. So his property will come to his own son.
Yeah.
Yeah, and prevent his wife take off his dowry.
Yeah, so basically he wants to keep the dowry within his family line. So basically, if he wants to prevent that his wife taking the dowry and going with like somebody like his mortal enemy.
但是我们学历史是从这个历史去看历史的，他们不能跟我们现在相比，因为那个时候阿提卡地区，也可以说整个希腊地区吧，都很穷，很难吃饱饭。
Yeah, well, at the time, the Athenian area was very poor because, well, I'll talk about why they don't have enough food. Basically, we did talk about this in the Greco-Persian Wars, like when I discussed about why Persia would ever invade such a small piece of land, especially when half of it is covered by mountains. Not just half, like most of it, there is barely any place to grow crops. And we did mention sometime during one of the earlier classes in which Athens, like a lot of the Athens resources, their stuff, their crops half of them are like imported, like bought instead of grown, because they don't have any place to grow it. You can't grow on the mountains.
所以说，生一个女儿的话，这个女儿在14岁就要出嫁了，就不能给自己家干活了。然后他还要给她准备一份嫁妆，然后有些希腊的父亲就会觉得不划算或者养不起，他们就会把女孩子给扔掉，这在当时是非常普遍的事情，而且是完全合法的，就跟我们现在是完全不一样的。 女性的地位在那个时候，特别是在雅典这个地方，地位是很低的。
Yeah, at the time, the social status of women was very low. So, and like after, if they have a daughter and she reaches 14, you have to prepare a dowry for her in order to marry. And so, that's just, just a bad deal because they would be losing money. So, sometimes they would just, abandon them, which was perfectly legal back then, but now that we look at it, it's just totally sick. All right, so now after Athenian woman, so there was also this thing called Kyrios, basically like guardianship over a woman. So one example of modern Kyrios or guardianship is this person. Anybody know this person? Anybody know her? Okay, well, she is Britney Spears,
A very famous,
yeah, a very famous
superstar.
Star, yeah, and she was under the guardianship of her father until the age of 40, because when she was like small, the court decided that she didn't have the ability to make decisions for herself, so she was put under the guardianship of her father until the age of 40, where she then went to court and said that she was being forced to work. So well, of course, one big difference is that Athenian women can't go to court. That's a big difference. But another one is that the ancient Greek women were under the Kryos, or the guardianship of their parents, or like their husbands for like all their life. They had to be under the guardianship of like a man for forever.
Yes. 他们最开始的时候是有父亲的话，就是由他的父亲来监护他，然后如果说她出嫁了之后，就是由她的丈夫来监护她，她的丈夫死去之后，就是由她的儿子来监护她，如果他们都不在了的话，他就由他们的男性亲属来监护她。就是在雅典，所有的女性都必须under control by the female relatives.
Male.
Oh, male.
Yeah. All right. So okay. Anyway, let's watch a video here about the woman in ancient Athens.
Women have continually been denied the rights and freedoms enjoyed by men in the modern world. And it was the same in ancient Athens. Despite the limitations placed on them, women of all statuses played important roles in private and public Athenian life. Although Athenian fathers were considered their daughters' legal guardians, mothers played an important role in their upbringing by preparing them to become wives and mothers. Once married, wealthy and aristocratic women spent most of their time indoors, managing the day-to-day running of their households. Skilled weavers, they manufactured high-quality fabrics, clothes, and decorations, often with the help of enslaved women. The Greek term for household management, oikonomia, is where we get the English word economy. Because women were considered legal minors, they were not allowed to vote, to own or manage private property, or represent themselves in court. Instead, they relied on men to act on their behalf in public. Poor women, however, had no choice but to work outside of their households. Ironically, from a modern perspective, these women seem to have been offered more freedoms. Perhaps Athenian women's most important public roles were in religion. Greek religion required the active participation of women as priestesses, prophets, worshippers, and patrons. The Pythia, the oracle and high priestess of Apollo at Delphi, was the religious center of the Greek-speaking world. Men from around the Mediterranean would come to ask this woman important questions about war, business, and relationships. While the sheer number of important female protagonists that feature in Greek literature is proof that women had influence in many other aspects of Athenian society. How did women in ancient societies carry out meaningful lives despite the limits placed on them?
And that was that was true. A woman had a very, very important place in religion. And if they actually wanted equality, religion was the best place to go. So first, let's take a look at Aspasia, who another notable Greek woman.
Mm.
Anybody heard of her? And do you know who? Anybody heard of her? Yes. It might be a bit like unknown to many of you. Aspasia is Pericles' girlfriend. I think you guys all know Pericles. However, she was from Miletus, and their relationship was denied by the Athenian people, even though they lived in the same house and like acted like a couple. However, they were not let let to be like official. She was a hetairai, right? Basically like an upper class woman, and she owns a brothel. She was a very smart, open-minded, respected, and ambitious woman. She had many political ambitions. She was also respected by many people, and many people chat with her, such as Socrates, Protagoras, Sophocles, Euripides, and many, many more. These people all are, her friends, and they all want to know like her opinions on politics. But like the typical woman, they would not be asked for their opinion on politics because nobody thought that actually mattered.
他是当时几乎是极少的在雅典的这种政治生活中留下声音的女性，然后当时她跟苏格拉底啊，跟很多人的这种交往都留下了很多的记录。有人说，当时他们说他是苏格拉底的门徒，也有那个柏拉图说他是苏格拉底的导师，然后还有他自己也因为他的就是对政治的参与，所以说有一些雅典人也很讨厌他，好几次都把他送到法庭，然后她的男朋友伯利克利还帮她辩护。但是不管他多么有争议吧，就是他本身在这个雅典政治生活中的这种女性的发声，就是非常非常了不起，非常非常special 的一件事情。
Yeah.
Please.
So she, even though she was like a very special voice of like woman in history, however, some Athenian people very disliked her and got her into court many times, in which Pericles defended her. And later, after like a few wars, Pericles he pleaded the representatives of the citizens that I did so much for you all, because Pericles was a very respected figure back then, and after a bit the Athenian citizens did accept their relationship. All right, so now the video mentioned how women were very, very important in religion. Anybody want to guess? I want to have a few guesses on why. Any?
They are like maybe like they probably believe something like in their religion, like in the Athenian religion, they probably like believe that women have some kind of power.
Well, this was more like Crete, where they worshipped goddesses. But however, women were very important in religion in most city-states. Anybody else want to take a guess? All right, so first, before we actually do talk about religion, let's first talk about like many festivals dedicated to women, because these festivals were probably the only time in the year that they actually would have fun. And we'll talk about how they're very well connected to religion soon after. at the end, where we will mention the priestesses.
Mhm.
First of all, it's the Parthenac Festival. Anyone want to guess on what it's about? Just looking at the name of it. Parthenac. Anybody seen like what the word looks like? We just talked about this like last time.
Yeah.
Patrick.
Maybe it has something to do with like the Parthenon at the
Yes,
on the
yes.
Athenian Acropolis.
Exactly. It's a festival celebrating Athena, because it sounds like Parthenon, right? And Parthenon was like a Athenian temple, for Athena.
Athena Persano.
Yeah. Yeah, so the Parthenac festival is for Athena, in which women go around and giving out like clothes they sew in themselves, and they put them as a sacrifice. And of course, there's also a sacrifice list in which important members of the society, such as the 10 generals, would receive a share of the sacrifice. So for example, if we sacrifice a total of 100 gold coins, then maybe like Pericles, the general, maybe he might receive like 3 gold coins out of that much. Maybe a bit more, maybe a bit less. But just to show that he can get like a portion of it.
And then?
Yeah, next is Dionysus Festival, which was really like probably the time of the year in which women look to most
大家还
forward
记得
to.
Dionysus 是
Yeah,
什
do you
么
guys
神吗？
remember what or who Dionysus is? Patrick?
Is he a god of? Is he a goddess or something?
He's a god.
Oh,
The god of wine.
Yeah, the god of wine.
God of
The god of
party.
wine and grapes. The god of wine and grapes.
Yeah, and according to mythology, he was the one who created the grapes. Patrick,
他已经弄过，忘了继续。
okay.
啊
Okay, so Dionysus was the god of parties, wine, madness, and many more. So basically on this festival, women could drink as much wine as they want, ate a lot of like food that they usually weren't allowed to eat, such as like a lot of meat and such. And they could just feast and party. And you have a question?
Isn't it, I remember like women, they weren't allowed to drink wine at all.
Yeah, they probably couldn't drink wine during like their average day. So basically the Dionysus festival was for give them like a lot more freedom than they usually would have.
然后不要他们的，不用去照顾孩子，不用去做家务活儿啊。我想你们的妈妈也希望有这样一个节日，可以休息一下。
Basically, they could get rid of their responsibilities for that day, and they could do anything they wanted to. Well, not like blow up the city or something. Basically, they could do anything that they usually couldn't do. And next is Thesmophoria. This title might be a bit harder to guess, but if you guys want to guess, or
No guess.
yeah, because it's a bit harder to get. So Thesmophoria is the festival celebrating Demeter, the goddess of harvest, and Persephone, the queen of the underworld.
Yes.
However, she is also the daughter of Demeter. So Thesmophoria, basically the woman could leave their houses for a full 3 days without returning, which meant a lot of freedom. They could do a lot of things they wouldn't do. And in these festivals, usually it was only the women that were allowed to participate. Men couldn't participate in these. They could basically party all 3 days and dance and such. Once again, throwing down the responsibilities. It's sort of like the Dionysus festival except extended.
Funeral.
All right, next is funeral ceremonies. We all know when someone dies, they get a funeral. And usually women were the people who like mainly organize it,
body
clean it up, bury them and such. We will also tell you guys why after we talk about their like religious connections. All right, last is basically there were only be priestesses, no priests. Well, that was because mainly they would be like priestesses. They required females and as like a messenger of God, and basically priestesses were also the only way that they could actually get equality, because people go to priestesses all the time, such as the one in Delphi, the Pythia. Basically they give out like prophecies and like tell you advice, like you give them money, they tell you like beware of the tortoise or something. They tell you some sort of mystified some code and you figure the rest out for yourself. However, that still did not give them power because okay, well, I'm not gonna say it. Do you guys have any guesses on why that wouldn't give them any power? Any is that from before?
No, and that won't give them power because they still won't have power to drink wine. I think that will just make them fast even more because they're like priestesses. And also, I have another question. It's like, won't they like just lie, for example, be aware of the toilet that's gonna overflood, and then that gives them no clue of what's gonna happen, and then they just do that for money.
Yeah, so basically I think you probably got the second part right, because it's mainly they give out the prophecies, they give out the advice, but they can't force them to do anything. So basically they just give them like mystified, and they don't even know what they're talking about half of the time. So for example, if I just tell you guys like, hey guys, like for example, if I tell you guys beware of meeting befriending strangers, you guys probably don't know what that really like means. Like, why beware? So people usually they decipher the message in different ways, and basically all they can do is provide them with information for them to try and figure out themselves. The people that come, they receive the information, they go, and they just keep it in mind. Basically, you don't force them to do anything. They do what they want, depending on how you just like, you can't really affect them using your words.
Yeah, I have a question. I have a example，就是在波西战争的时候，然后德尔斐的神谕说让那个雅典人躲到躲到幕墙后面。那这个幕墙是什么呢？他自己就是跟你说了之后，你就自己去解读，你想说是什么是什么。就是有的人就认为是在雅典的城周围建一堵墙，有的人就认为那个是船。
Yeah, so like one example would be during the Greco-Persian Wars, when Athens went to Delphi, the Oracle of Delphi. Delphi said that you will be protected by a wall of wood. What was the wood? So basically, some people thought that was the walls of Athens. Some people thought that was the ships. And I personally thought that was probably the ships, because then there were during the Battle of Salamis, the Strait of Salamis was so clogged up by wood ships that they could easily win with their small ships against Xerxes' giant fleet that could barely move.
Let's talk about the reason.
Yeah, so now let's talk about reasons why they're more connected to religion. First of all, fertility, because most of the people want crops, because once again, mountains. Greece is filled with mountains. There was barely any place to get any crops. So Socrates once requested to have free food for the rest of his life. Now we probably know why that was pretty, like very unreasonable for him to ask for, because free food was so hard to get. If you want to supply for this man to live to that life, who knows how long he's gonna live for? Maybe he might live for another like 50, 60 years. Maybe they just sentenced him to death later on. So that was also why the other dude with the painting, we talked about him last time, when he got like a lifetime supply of free food, that's why he was so happy that he decided to draw for free for them.
Yes.
Nowadays, we don't really have that crisis, because now we produce, you can get a few pizzas every few minutes, right? You can probably survive on just pizza, and won't that cost you that much? We have, the world is filled with pizza. So you can probably get like a lifetime supply of food nowadays, but back then crops were so hard to get, and it's, like the tiny amount of crops they farm, and like they have to pay so much for the importing of crops where they buy from other countries, other states. Basically, they did not have enough food to produce. So giving someone free food for the rest of their life was very meaningful. All right, and also, anyways, continue on. So, women were associated with fertility. So basically, they would be asked to pray to, the gods for food, like,
因为女性也会生孩子。
yeah, because they relate a woman having children to how we grow crops, so that's why. That's one reason. There's actually many more. And the second reason was contact with gods was considered very dangerous. Anybody want to guess on why it was considered dangerous for you to come in contact with gods? Any?
Maybe like if you say the wrong thing, like the gods, they'll maybe like zap you, or like punish you, or curse you or something. If you like, for example, say something that they didn't like, it would be pretty dangerous.
Yeah. Rami, do you have your hand up?
It was the same as Annie's.
Okay. So I'm going to move on. We might not have enough time left, so I'm gonna keep moving on. So there's a crack in this ground in a temple where mist spewed out. People called it like the mouth of God or something. I don't quite remember the name, but basically there was like air like flowing out. People got a whiff of it, and then they started to spread rumors that it was like actually driving people crazy. So people thought that was dangerous. So they decided to, men don't want to do it. They have a woman just look after it, basically preventing the danger of everybody else going in there and just sniffing out. Other people say that, people fall in it and they disappear. So basically, men don't want these dangerous jobs. So they give them to women.
Women to do that.
Yeah.
Yes. The third,
Athenian people are just scared. They're scared of death. Of course, we also are. But the thing is, they're scared of death and filth. However, in this situation, filth does not mean like dirty, like mud and stuff like that. They thought of like death and sickness were dirty and like unhealthy to them. So basically, if there was a sight of illness or death, then it had to be purified. And also, since childbirth is somehow also related to like dirt and filth, they make the woman purify the places, because they're already tainted. Why not just let them taint some more? We can stay safe. All right. And so basically women are they make women like purify the places, and they make them become priestesses, so they can have contact with the gods instead of them, and they could also ask the gods for crops.
所以说他们就把女性推到前方。既然那个大家女性生产也是不洁的，那就让女的到前面去承担这种不洁的风险，不洁和死亡的风险。那他们男的就可以缩在后面，就不用承担风险了。
Okay.
I'll translate.
Oh yeah, right. So
Sorry.
so basically, the men were scared of death, so they have the woman go in the front lines to face the filthy death, while they just stay back and safe, cozy in their houses.
所以说
And be like cowards.
Yeah.
有的人说，就是希腊的女性，她们虽然没有政治地位，但是她们在家里头啊，在宗教领域啊，还是挺有地位的。然后，但是实际上呢，让我们看一看，就是这些就是这个 Athens 的这个女性，她们在家里做的工作不被承认，然后连自己的钱都不能用，然后她们在宗教上面也只是做了这种就是。男人不做，然后就推着他们去做的东西，而且他们也不能受到保护。这么看的话，其实就是整个女性在雅典的是地位是比较低下的。但是呢，在这个整个希腊世界当中，有一个相对而言对于女性来说会比较愉快的地方，这个地方就是。
Do you guys want to guess? You guys want?
Translate for me.
Okay, so. Even though women were not treated very fairly in most city-states, there was one city-state where they were all treated the same, even though it wasn't very good for them either. Do you guys have any guesses on which city-state it was?
Just one guess.
Kathy, was that from before?
I just wanted to ask, like, at the end of the day, can you summarize everything so we can review it all?
Yeah, okay. So basically women, their marriage was very controlled, and their only like fair jobs were in religious, where they only could get the jobs that men didn't want. Basically a lot of unfairties.
Can I guess?
Yes, go ahead.
Sparta.
Yes, this is Sparta. Anyway, so basically, Sparta woman had got it actually much better than other cities. First of all, anyone want to guess the age in which woman married? You guys can type in the chat or just say it out loud.
23.
Okay. Anyways, so well, it's like a bit not that old. So like women married at about 18 to 20, which was legal age. At least it was legal age, not like the 14 or 15-year-olds.
12th grade or go
college.
to the university. Yeah.
Probably like 12th grade to like college level. And the men also married at about 20. So basically the time gap, the age gap wasn't very big, which was much better than Athens. Second, they were actually educated. Well, at least, but mostly in like physical sports such as wrestling, hunting, throw javelins, and etc. Because it was Sparta.
Because他们要
I know.
要生育孩子。
Anyways, and also because they had to have children. Also, men were mostly at war, like in war camps. So that woman had to stay behind and sometimes just manage the whole country, the city-state. Third, even though they still did not have any place in politics, the men still listened to their woman. Like, here's an example. Agis IV was a king of Sparta. He implemented the distribution of wealth. I won't go in that deep into that. And he with his mother, his grandmother. And after he died, his wife remarried and convinced her second husband to continue it. Basically, he had to listen to her. And the last part, which was the best part, they could use their dowry, unlike the other people. They could actually use it, like instead of just getting it completely taken.
而且他们可以用他们的这些，他们可以用他们自己随便用他们的嫁妆，他们可以去买卖房产、买卖土地，然后可以去进行交易，然后可以给自己买马车，可以给自己买特别多的首饰什么的，他们都可以。而且他们的丈夫死了之后，他们不像雅典那个钱是要给什么儿子什么的，他们也可以继承，就说他们也可以继承，就是在没有儿子或者是怎么的情况下，他们也可以继承丈夫的遗产。然后他们拿了丈夫的遗产之后，当然他们也可以继承父亲的遗产，当然那个前提是他的兄弟已经没有了。然后他可以继承父亲的遗产，可以继承丈夫的遗产，他们还可以带着这些遗产重新再出嫁，他们的遗产就已经累积起来了。
Basically, the Spartan women, they could use their dowry to buy stuff like their carriages, horses, accessories, and such. But back then, Athenian women, they can only use a tiny bit of cash to buy their daily needs, and only for like making food and such as like fruits and veggies. And like Spartan women could also inherit wealth, and they could even take their wealth and marry to a different man.
他们还可以参加体育比赛，他们的那个体育比赛就是得到奖杯的话，家庭把他们的荣誉看得和他们家里的儿子的荣誉一样重要。
Yeah, so they could also usually there was they couldn't participate in Olympic games, but they could participate in the Hellenic games, and usually the families valued both the men and the females awards the same, so sometimes they get trained specifically for that. And as you might guess, in the Hellenic games, it was usually Sparta that won. Anyway, here's a video about the different lifestyles of Sparta and Athens.
Yeah.
Okay, and basically it was actually depicted very great because in Sparta, the schools, they actually had schools, even though it wasn't for like it was mainly for wrestling and such.
女性的地位呢，现在是大家都可以看到，即使是相比于斯巴达，然后我们现在的女性地位也有了很大的提高，但是肯定是远远不够的。然后我们所有的男孩子、女孩子，然后我们都要一起为创造一个更加平等，男孩和女孩都更加平等的这么一个世界而努力。
So even though our society now is much better than back then, still it still has some giant gender biased, so we should all work towards like non-biased to gender society. And that's probably it for today. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you. Cassie?
Can you tell me the name?
Thank you.